The wind was so strong on the bridge that it stole his breath as much as the fear did. One foot was already over the edge. Her hands trembled on the cold railing. He didn't know her name. He didn't know her story. All he knew was that if he didn't speak right then, if he didn't reach out with everything he had left, she would disappear into the darkness below, and his life would never be the same again. Before we go any further, if stories about real human moments like this move you, welcome to Kindness Tales. This is a place where we share reminders that even in the hardest moments, kindness still matters. If this story touches you, consider subscribing, give it a like, and let me know your thoughts in the comments as we go along. Earlier that evening, his life felt like it had been shrinking day by day. He was a single dad in his mid-30s, living in a small apartment on the edge of a tired American city where factories had closed, and dreams often followed. Every morning started before sunrise, not because he wanted to, but because his 8-year-old son needed breakfast, clean clothes, and a ride to school before he could make it to his job at a warehouse across town. Money was always tight. Some weeks it felt like he was choosing which bill to pay and which apology to make to himself. His wife had passed away 3 years earlier after a sudden illness, leaving him with grief he never fully learned how to carry. He tried to be strong for his son, tried to smile when he asked about Mom, tried to make life feel normal. But nights were long, and exhaustion had a way of turning every quiet moment into a reminder of everything he'd lost. That day had been especially hard. His boss had warned him that if he was late one more time, he might not have a job at all. His car made a noise that sounded expensive, and his phone buzzed with another overdue notice. When he picked up his son from after-school care, the boy talked excitedly about a class project while he nodded and smiled, wondering how he'd stretch what little he had left until Friday. After dinner, his son fell asleep on the couch with a cartoon still playing softly. He carried him to bed, tucked him in, and stood there longer than usual, watching his chest rise and fall. Sometimes that was the only moment in the day when he felt steady. Then he grabbed his jacket and told himself he just needed a walk to clear his head. The bridge wasn't part of the plan. It was just on the way. An old concrete overpass, crossing a river that reflected city lights like broken stars. He slowed down when he noticed someone standing unusually still near the railing. At first, he thought she was just looking at the water. Then he saw how rigid her body was, how her shoulders shook despite the noise of passing cars. He stopped. He hesitated. 1,000 thoughts raced through his mind. Maybe it wasn't his business. Maybe he'd say the wrong thing. Maybe he'd make it worse. But then he saw her foot lift, searching for space beyond the edge, and his body moved before fear could stop it. He walked toward her slowly, hands visible, voice shaking more than he wanted it to. He told her not to jump, not like a command, more like a plea. She turned just enough for him to see her face streaked with tears, eyes red and hollow. She looked young, too young to be standing there alone with that kind of pain. She told him it didn't matter, that nothing mattered anymore. Her voice cracked on every word, as if even speaking hurt. He didn't argue. He didn't tell her everything would be okay. He just said he understood more than she might think, and that he was really glad he had stopped. Traffic roared around them, indifferent. He edged closer, keeping his voice low, telling her about his son, about how some days he felt like he was failing at everything. But then his kid would smile at him over a bowl of cereal, and for a moment it was enough to keep going. He told her he didn't know her pain, but he knew what it felt like to wake up tired of fighting. Something shifted. Her foot came back onto the pavement. Her shoulders sagged, as if the strength to hold herself together was finally gone. She collapsed into sobs, gripping the railing, and he stood beside her, unsure what to do except stay. Eventually, she let him walk her to a bench near the bridge. He offered her his jacket when he noticed how cold she was. She told him her name, that she had come to the city for college, that everything had fallen apart so fast she didn't know how to stop it. Her grades had dropped. Her scholarship was gone. She was working 2 jobs and still falling behind. She felt invisible, like no one would notice if she vanished. He listened. He didn't interrupt. He didn't try to fix her life in that moment. When she asked why he stopped, why he cared, he surprised himself with the honesty of his answer. He told her he couldn't bear the thought of someone's child not coming home tonight. He told her he was a dad, and even if she wasn't his, she mattered. They sat there until her breathing slowed. Eventually, he offered to walk her to a nearby cafe that stayed open late. They talked about ordinary things, about favorite foods and childhood memories, about how strange it was that two strangers could meet on a bridge and feel less alone for a few minutes. When they finally parted, she thanked him in a way that felt deeper than words. He watched her walk away, hoping with everything in him that she would be okay. That night he barely slept. The image of her standing on the edge replayed over and over in his mind. He hugged his son a little tighter the next morning, grateful for the simple fact that they were both still there. Weeks passed. Life didn't magically improve. He still struggled, still worried, still felt worn down. But something inside him had shifted. When his son asked why he always told him to be kind, even when it was hard, he thought about the bridge and said, "Because you never know how much someone needs it." One afternoon, his son came home unusually quiet. He mentioned a new substitute, teacher at school who had been really nice to him when he forgot his lunch. The next day, the school sent a note home about a meeting for parents. He almost didn't go, worried about missing work. But he showed up anyway, sitting in a small classroom filled with mismatched chairs and fluorescent lights. When the teacher walked in, his breath caught. It was her. She looked healthier, steadier, but her eyes widened the moment she saw him. For a second, neither of them moved. Then recognition settled between them like a shared secret. After the meeting, she approached him, hands clasped together, and told him she'd thought about that night every single day since it happened. She explained that after the bridge, she'd finally asked for help. A counselor at her college had connected her with resources. She'd found part-time work at the school while finishing her degree in education. Working with kids, she said, had reminded her why she wanted to keep going in the first place. Then she said something that stunned him. She told him his son was the reason she'd applied to that school district. She had remembered the way he spoke about his child, the love in his voice. And she wanted to be the kind of adult who could offer that same sense of safety to kids who needed it. They talked for a long time in the empty classroom. She told him she never got to properly thank him. He told her he never expected to see her again, and that seeing her there felt like proof that that night mattered. As the months went on, their paths crossed often. She became a familiar presence in his son's life, encouraging him, praising his efforts, slipping extra snacks into his backpack when she noticed he hadn't eaten much. When she learned about the father's financial struggles, she quietly connected him with a school program that helped with groceries and after-school care. She never made him feel ashamed. She made him feel seen. One evening, as they stood outside the school watching children get picked up, she admitted that she sometimes wondered what would have happened if he hadn't stopped that night. He answered honestly. He said he didn't know where he'd be either, because saving her had saved something in him too. It had reminded him that even when life felt unbearable, he still had something to give. Their bond didn't come from romance or grand gestures. It grew from shared understanding and mutual respect, from two people who had stood on the edge in different ways and chosen together to step back. Years later, his son would barely remember the details of that bridge. But he would remember growing up surrounded by people who showed up. He would remember a teacher who believed in him and a father who never stopped trying even when it hurt. Kindness doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's just stopping when you're tired, speaking when you're scared, or listening when you don't know what to say. That night on the bridge didn't fix everything, but it changed the direction of two lives in quiet, lasting ways. It proved that even the smallest act, offered at the right moment, can ripple outward further than we ever imagine. If this story reminds you of a moment when someone's kindness helped you keep going, or a time when you chose to stop and care, share it in the comments. You never know who might need to read it today.